Ooh, ooh, ooh. There's only one of you, so tell us your story like only you do. We're on the same team of dreamers, a happy, scrappy group of believers. So come, play a part. There's room for mistakes and messes and art. Who cares if there's not many takers? We're doing it for the makers.
Hey everybody, welcome to the For the Makers podcast. We are pumped that you are here. So sorry, I double hit the intro music.
It's a live show.
It's a live show, ladies and gentlemen.
Just kidding, it's not.
You guys, I just need you to know that every time we listen to that intro song, the tambourine just hits, right? The added tambourine really just makes it.
You know, you can thank Logic Pro for that tambourine.
Thank you, Logic Pro, for the tambourine.
I was like, oh my gosh, I can put tambourine in this? Heck yeah.
She was like, let's go,
Yeah.
Tambourine. Yeah,
It's a whole process.
It's every single time Rach and I listen to it, both of us are like, and tambourine. And we like mime ourselves doing the tambourine. It's awesome.
It's a good time.
You guys, thanks for listening today. I hope that you're having a fantastic day. And a quick reminder as we move forward with this particular podcast today, that we do release our podcast every month on the second and fourth Friday, because you clap on the 2 and the 4.
Not on the 1 and the 3. I really hate to break it to those of you who have been clapping on the 1 and the 3. Whoops.
But with love, you're wrong.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's a choice.
But it's incorrect. Anyway, we will, as you guys hopefully know by now, I'm one of your hosts, Lee Beth Etheridge, and I'm here with the one and only
Rachel Gifford.
She always laughs when I say that, but I will continually say it. So you just need to get used to it by now. You guys, we have such a special guest with us today. I cannot wait for you guys to know her and know her story. And it's just, I'm excited.
I know.
Rach, introduce our guest today.
Okay, today we have Mariah Muehler on the podcast, and I'm so excited that she's here. I'm going to do a little cold reading of her bio. Mariah is a versatile and passionate artist hailing from Northern California. She discovered her love for performing at a young age, performing in her community's musical theater productions. In high school, she wrote and produced her own pop album. Come on, Mariah.
Okay.
But it was her classical voice training in college that ultimately led to her falling in love with opera. After applying to 13 grad schools, she moved to Canada to pursue a master's in opera performance from the University of British Columbia. Since then, she moved to New York and has performed with companies such as Bronx Opera, Savannah VOICE Festival, VHRP Live, and sang at Carnegie Hall, which is a huge accomplishment. Mariah, welcome to the podcast.
Yay.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here. Mariah and I met in a Meisner in music class, which if you're in New York or anywhere in the world, because they have Zoom classes, you gotta catch one of those classes.
Yeah, I was about to say, can both of you just like hype up Meisner in music really quick? Or
I'm pretty sure that Mariah and I will always hype up Meisner in music.
Yeah, it's changed my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, give the gentle listeners, as our friend Rachel Lind likes to say, some information about what this even is.
So basically, Meisner in music, Mariah, you can chime in here whenever you want, is a class that takes the Meisner acting technique and teaches you how to apply it to vocal performance. So there's a lot of musical theater people in the class. There's a lot of opera singers in the class. I'm musical theater, Mariah's opera, which makes a really cool, like, diverse environment when it comes to, like, I guess I can't say, well, you can say disciplines, because there was a class with a violinist in it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can apply it to a lot of different musical performances.
Yeah, I think we've had a few classmates who weren't really pursuing it, but just sort of wanted a creative outlet.
Yeah, Exactly. Anyway, it's a great class, and yeah, Mariah, we'll probably talk about it more in the podcast. Just
I have a feeling.
How I have a
Slight feeling that that's a possibility.
And we're talking about how Meisner's changed our lives.
Yeah.
But yes, and then we learned that, well, Mariah and LB just met today, and then we learned that you know Carly Spino.
Yes, I grew up doing musical theater with her at El Dorado Musical Theater.
When Rachel told me that, I lost it. That's insane.
Yeah.
What a small world. Truly. That's crazy.
I mean, you always hear about the arts being a small world, but that's just a different level.
All the way across the country, friend that you did theater with, and it's just...
Because how did you find out about Meisner music?
I took from... Jillian and I took from Ted Wold.
Okay.
And so that's how but I also saw things on Instagram, I think.
I was going to say, yeah, some people said that they found out about it through TikTok. So
cool.
It's just so wild that we all ended up in that space.
Yes.
And then to have that connection.
This is such a random, and because Carly doesn't live here anymore either. Yeah. She's like a world traveler, and
the nomad that she is.
She's amazing. And Carly and I went to college together. Anyway, it's just, that's in episode 1, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I listened to that episode, and I was in that production that got her into EDMT.
No way.
Cavalcade of Broadway. A mix of Annie, Oliver, and Grease.
Okay, wait, pause. Time out. What a grouping of musicals we have there, ladies and gentlemen.
Can you believe it's not done more often?
Yeah.
I wonder why.
I'm just like, Annie and Oliver...
Makes sense.
But then you said Grease, and I was like, you lost me.
Yeah.
Not a clue.
Just out of left field with the Grease.
Is there footage of that anywhere?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I need to see that.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
I'll find the VHS.
The VHS.
We love a VHS.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man, that's amazing.
There are ways you can digitalize everything now.
This is true. Unfortunately.
Scary.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately.
Scary.
Okay, so Mariah, kind of want to just jump into the questions with you because I think we'll be able to pull a lot out of these. So what got you into the arts to begin with?
This is going to sound so cheesy, but I really do think that music chose me. I came into this world singing. I was that kid at the top of the playground, in the dome of the slide.
Yes.
I was singing in that while everyone else was playing tag. My mom couldn't find me for hours because I was hidden in the dome of the slide.
You're like, the acoustics in here are awesome.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
I haven't sung on a slide since, but I assume they're still pretty good.
Yeah.
Which explains why I love to sing in the bathroom.
Right.
Just live sound.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. But yeah, my mom noticed that from a very young age, and she's like, okay, we got to get this kid in some voice lessons. Mm-hmm. She took me to a teacher, and they were like, we can't really do anything with her because she can't read English yet, let alone music.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just always been something I've done.
Yeah.
And really been my creative outlet as well of how to express myself. I've learned so much about myself through the arts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's always been a huge part of my identity, for better or for worse.
Yeah. I love that. Music chose me. So in college, I think is what you said in your bio, that's when you really fell in love with opera.
Yes.
What was that process like? Because can we talk about your pop album that you made in high school?
Yeah, truly.
I didn't know this.
We can't talk about it.
No.
Also, I'd like to thank ChatGPT for giving me that bio.
Hilarious.
Amazing. Truly.
There should be a class on how to write a bio because it's
the worst. I know. Everybody says that. And when
I know. When Rachel's like, I'm going to do a cool reading of your bio, every single person's like,
yeah.
Well, and I listened to Carly's and I was like, oh, this is so poetic.
Oh, well,
it's Carly.
Right, exactly. Yeah. She's
like, oh, good.
Yes.
No, I love yours.
I grew up in musical theater from the age of 8 until I was 18, really, performing with EDMT and in high school. had a lot of friends who were singers, songwriters, or like had microphones at their houses. And so the first time I got a MacBook Pro, I went to GarageBand and I was like, I am going to write some songs.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you could really give me credit for producing the album, because there's a lot of free GarageBand tracks on that album. But yeah, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I wrote an entire album, I think of like 12 songs.
Wow.
Full, like first verse, chorus, bridge, all of that.
Wow.
I actually wrote a Christmas song when I was a freshman in college, and a radio station asked to play it.
That's amazing. That's cool.
But I was like out of the pop world at that point, so I was like,
you're like,
nah.
I don't know.
You turned down the radio station?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was like, because musical theater was never really my thing. I don't know how to belt to this day. I also have a very soprano voice, so the pop world wasn't for me either. Like I would do pop competitions and people were like, I'm not really sure if that was the sound we were looking for.
And you're like, okay, but that's what I got.
And this is like before, I feel like shows like The Voice, you know, they have a little bit more of that folk sound now, where you can be a little bit more of a soprano.
Yeah.
Right.
That was not a thing when I was trying to get into the pop world. So I was like, well, even though I don't know what I'll sing, I know I have to sing. Like I'm just called to sing. So what better to do than study voice in college? And unbeknownst to me, I was not prepared that meant classical training for the most part.
Wow, yeah.
So I auditioned at like 2 schools. Didn't have the right material to even audition, really. I had one Italian art song that by chance I knew, and a musical theater piece. And I was like, well, here we go. And a teacher had worked with a past teacher of mine who studied classical music, and the only reason I had that art song. And she was like, oh, you know, I would love to have you come back. We'll do a work session. And she really fought for me to go to San Diego State University. She said, I understand that you do musical theater, you do a little bit of pop. We can work with that. I will, like, obviously you have certain classes you have to take in the classical discipline, but she said she would work with me on whatever I wanted to do. So I was like, well, okay, no one else is fighting for me, so let's do it. And then through having to do recitals, I just found myself sort of bored by the curriculum of like, choose 3 Italian art songs, 3 German art songs, 3 French art songs. That didn't mean anything to me. And you could choose a set of songs that were maybe more related to each other, but there was no storyline. So I took it upon myself to create a storyline through my recitals.
That's cool.
And that was like my first introduction of, oh, there is storytelling here.
Right.
It's not just about the voice.
Right.
And at that time, or around that same time, I also started to feel like, oh, my voice fits this really well. Unlike, you know, the belting and musical theater, and definitely unlike the bubblegum pop sound. I was like, oh, okay, if I could fit here musically and have to still utilize my acting skills and storytelling skills, maybe this is it. Maybe I found it finally.
Wow. So that's how opera came to be. And I'm so excited to have you on here, because I think I love classical music. I love opera. And I just feel like the art form nowadays does not get enough credit, because, I mean, the discipline that it takes to just it's like an upkeeping of your voice, basically. But then also, like, just the physical demands of opera, it's like quite, I think it's surprising to a lot of people. And I don't know, can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. I mean, for those listening who don't know, typically opera singers are never mic'd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
That's
the raw
crazy.
voice, which is kind of wild.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm going to offend some people, but kind of unnecessary, I think, at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are some thick orchestrations
Yeah.
in these pieces. I think it would be okay to mic us. And I don't know if that's just the tradition of the art form. Maybe it's hard to mic us because of how we're singing.
Sure.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. It's interesting because I've had several conversations with other performers of like what's the difference between opera and musical theater. And
Yeah.
I actually thought of starting my own company during the pandemic and was sort of like, how do we make opera more accessible?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's our biggest battle right now.
Yeah.
Because it's like we were saying before we started recording, it's art you have to work for, or entertainment that you have to work for.
Right.
And it's long. I mean, you think about the way it was written.
Yeah.
I mean, did they see it once a week, once a month? To sit there for 5-6
Right.
hours, that had to last them however long. But now it's like, what's the shortest TikTok video you can make? Like 10 seconds?
Yeah. Or you sit through a 3-hour movie and you're like, whoa, that was long, you know? And it's like, there is a level of, I think I heard somebody say this one time, you either absolutely love opera or you don't like opera at all. There's not really a middle ground. And I feel like, I don't know if I'd necessarily agree with that statement, because I think people, if they were exposed to it more often, would fall in love with it. I think it is an art form that you have to continually go back to to grow in love for it. There are those people who watch it one time and are like,
I love it.
I'm obsessed. This is everything. But I feel similarly about musical theater. I think there are some pieces of musical theater that people will just gravitate to. But if you continually go back, you start to find out the nuances of this art form. And, oh, I like Italian pieces more than I like French, more than I like German. Oh, I am drawn to this type of musical styling, you know, whether it be you know, an aria. I love an aria versus like a big group of people all singing at the same time, you know, so more of an ensemble piece. So it's just a very, I agree with you that the major battle for opera is accessibility.
Yeah.
We have a friend actually who Rach used to babysit for.
I was just going to bring this up.
Yeah. Do you want to talk to it?
Yeah. So this woman that I babysat for a long time when I first, I guess not when I first moved here. But anyway.
Through the pandemic.
Not important.
What is time?
Yeah, what is time? But she is a pianist and usually plays for operas. And I should say too, she just has a love for opera. And she has 2 young kids. And I would assume, I actually don't know this, but I would assume that she started this company after she had her kids. But it's opera for kids, and it's called Prelude Opera. And they do, like, last year they did... what have I seen? Little Red Riding Hood.
Billy Goes Gruff.
Yeah, and it's one of them, I will get them mixed up, but one of them were like Mozart excerpts, and then one of them was Verdi. I don't know. I can't remember what the other one was. But it's just like, I don't know who does this. Whoever does this is like one of my heroes. But they take like the music and they they put English text of the like storyline of the fable or whatever it is onto the music.
I love that.
And they turn it into like a kid's, and I think they're usually like 30 minutes long. So, you know, because the kids' attention spans would not be able to handle an opera. But it's so entertaining, and I don't know, it just gets, kids at least seeing a glimpse of what this art form can be. Anyway, it's really, really cool. But yeah, I agree. I wish that there was some more accessible, and yeah.
Let's just say I think that's amazing. I think personally that is honoring the music.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I feel like, think that is going against the tradition.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such,
Wow.
I mean, I hate to say it, but it's an old art form
Yeah.
in the way that people view it.
Sure.
They're afraid almost to radicalize it, you know, like cut it down. Like, again, you have to realize when it was being written, people wanted to sit there and listen to 3 iterations of the same thought
Right.
on essentially the same notes.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. But I don't think you have to do away with the classics.
Right.
You can find a way
Yeah.
to preserve them and condense them.
Right.
Well, I mean, we do that with Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Like nobody does a full.
A full
Well,
Shakespeare.
I shouldn't say that. Lots of people do full Shakespeare, but
But how do they do the Shakespeare though?
exactly, they do
That's
them in different ways, and a lot of times, I mean, it's public domain, so they will chop scenes. They don't do the full thing all the time.
Well, and even when they do it, when they
You did not.
sorry, I couldn't help myself.
That was brilliant.
I couldn't help myself.
We're having this like great conversation about opera.
and I'm like, doo-doo.
I did just rewatch Friends, and there's Chandlerism
Oh my
right there.
gosh, totally.
100%. But even when Shakespeare is produced in its quote unquote most original form, so like in the Globe Theatre in London, you know, all that stuff, there are still modern elements applied. That way a modern audience can consume it. That's the thing, is that we are not back in the day where people have the attention span of 6, 7, you know, however many hours to be able to digest that piece.
Yes.
Same thing with Shakespeare. People don't want to sit through a, you know,
Or stand.
or
Remember when they
stand.
used to
Woo!
stand?
Yeah, or stand through a five act play that is not at least engaging enough to where they can digest what is being said.
Yeah.
And that's what art. If it's not digestible, then what's the point?
Exactly.
I don't know. That might be a radical statement to say.
No,
but-
I totally agree with that. I think art allows people to see themselves. And so if they can't digest it, they're less likely to have a connection to it.
Right. Exactly.
And that's, I mean, in my opinion, kind of the whole point.
Right.
Right.
Or it misses the whole point.
Right.
Right.
Okay, wait. This goes perfectly into the next question, which is, why do you think art is important?
That's such a big question.
It is, I know.
It's such a big question. Especially because I do think we're still very much in a world where the arts are the first thing to go. They're underfunded. But like being on the other side of the pandemic now, hopefully I can say that. I
Yeah.
feel like that's where we're at.
Yeah.
You know, where we were all starved for human connection, collaboration, expression. People had nothing but time to like stop and sit in their feelings.
Right.
And they didn't know what to do with them,
Yeah.
creator or not.
Right.
And I think, you know, the human experience is a wild one.
Truly.
There's no roadmap like telling us, okay, if you just take 2 lefts here and a right there, you're going to end up where you want to go.
Yeah.
Like in thinking about this, I have this image. This has to be a cartoon image somewhere in the world. I did not think this up. But there's like this staircase and a silhouette on a staircase of a human. And if they take like 2 steps more, they'll be at the top of the staircase. But they
Yeah.
don't know that. So they turn around and like go down a hallway or something.
Yeah.
I just feel like people at the end of the day want to be validated
Yeah.
and seen and know that they're not alone in their experience. And art is what allows people to do that. Like you and I could look at a painting and walk away with a completely different experience from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could walk away crying, you could walk away laughing. But we both felt seen in that piece.
Right.
Or we might not actually have any connection to it at all.
Right.
And I think that's what's so cool about the arts is there is something for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's I think, the mirror of the human experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get rid of that? How is that not more important?
Yeah.
Or like realized how important it is.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely a good question is like because we do live in a world where the art or artists or the industry, so to speak, or however you would frame it, seems or can be seen as frivolous. Like it can be as something extra. Like this is, this is just a perk. Like this is something extra that we get to experience rather than something that is necessary. And we were talking about this a little bit on our last podcast of like, art is necessary because it is a mirror to the human experience to other human beings. Yeah. And it really does bridge the gap between people and being able to, hopefully we're even more into a place where people since the pandemic have realized, this is necessary. Okay, now how do we integrate it into our schools? How do we continue to pay people well? How do we continue to push our creatives to be better? How do we continue to foster creativity within ourselves and within other people, even if they don't see themselves as creative?
Yeah. Because those stories need to also be told from the people who aren't the creators.
Exactly. Exactly. Whatever side of the artistic world that you see yourself in, whether you're a consumer, whether you are a creator, whatever it may be, art permeates, it just spreads itself throughout our lives. And the more we recognize that, I think, the better we all will be.
I agree.
Yeah. So how, kind of back to what we were talking about, within the opera world, kind of holding, because I respect that there's so much of an emphasis on tradition, because there is, I think there's something really beautiful to that. Well, first of all, LB and I are both in the musical theater world, and where did that come from? You had to start somewhere. Yeah. So that, the evolution of storytelling and music, to have the kind of original art form maintained is really spectacular and special. But at the same time, how do we incorporate all of this conversation of why we think art is important, so that it doesn't just become this museum piece?
Yeah.
Has that been, well, for you, okay, sorry, you say what you're going to say first.
No, I think I'm right there with you, because this is something, again, when I was should I try to save opera? Who am I? I talked to a lot of people about what it is that opera even is. Yeah. Because what makes opera different from musical theater? And how do we progress it? There is obviously modern opera being written.
Without a doubt, yeah.
But, and again, maybe I'm not aware of some stuff out there. Obviously, there is some stuff being written in the traditional opera way, but a lot of it is 21st century atonal music. Yeah. Great stories that are very current, that people can identify with, but not in the Puccini style or even the Mozart style. And so it's how do we get modern opera in the classic way if we're going to really go traditional with it? Yeah. And then also, how far can you push those boundaries before it becomes musical theater? Because that's sort of what I was leaning into. And I had some coaches be I think now you're in musical theater land.
Yeah. Because there is a lot, well, the crossover, I don't know. You think about Showboat and all of these
all those
and the operettas and
operettas.
You
Gilbert
think about
Sullivan and
I think about shows like Les Mis, and I'm Okay, this
Such
is
a
like
mix of,
this is like teetering on that line, man.
Totally.
Like the fact that there are soliloquies written in there, that there are these massive musical themes that are written, you know, for orchestrate, like beautiful orchestrations being done. But then also there are very musical theater moments intertwined within all of this. Like that I feel like is a good example of like the between, if that makes any sense.
Definitely.
Where it like kind of teeters between the opera world and the musical theater land. But even shows like Phantom of the Opera, which is written about an opera house, has pieces of opera in it, but it's not an opera.
Yes, that is my favorite comment from people saying that they're like, "Oh, I'm such a fan of opera. I love Phantom of the Opera."
And you're like,
You're kidding.
"No."
Oh no, time and time
no.
again. But you know what? They're seeing a show.
Yeah, exactly.
There is. It
Yeah.
might be what sparks them to see an opera.
Yeah.
So, however it gets you there,
Yeah.
I'm here for it. But
Yeah.
it's just always, you know, makes me
Yeah.
internally chuckle.
Did you see, what was the one that they just did at the Met this
The
season?
Hours.
The Hours. Did you see that?
I did.
So where does that fall in this conversation of like, it's modern? I mean, it was just written,
Yeah.
but it's not written in the style of traditional opera?
Yeah, it's definitely written in like what people would classify as modern opera, sort
Okay.
of 21st century writing, which is also an interesting thought of that I kind of struggle with. Musical theater feels like it transitions so well between like subgenres of musical theater. You have your
Totally.
golden era, you have your, I don't know, just
Jukebox
classic
and-
belts,
yeah.
and then you have your pop.
Pop rock, you have you have adaptation now of like
Yeah.
pop music into musical theater.
Yes. Oh, love Six.
Yeah.
Six.
That is for you. The company of Six.
Yeah.
Not sponsored, but
Yeah, exactly.
would love to be.
But please go.
And I guess you could argue the different styles of opera or classical music. You have classical music, you have romantic. You know, I guess those are our subgenres. It feels like we're not utilizing them as frequently as the musical theater world is utilizing
Interesting.
theirs
Okay. Yeah.
in a way. And maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm happy to be wrong about that. But yeah, the Hours, first of all, Kelly O'Hara is not a human.
My gosh.
She is not a human.
She's ridiculous.
Kelly, if you're listening,
I
we
mean,
love you.
We'd love to have you.
She
We
truly
would love to have you on the
Oh my gosh.
podcast.
I would die. Yeah, I mean, she just opens her mouth and you're like, what?
Insane.
And
And
like,
she's-
what a powerhouse trio. I'm just like Donato, what's her first name?
Joyce.
Joyce, thank you.
Yeah.
And then
Renee
Renee Fleming.
Fleming.
I was just like,
How?
gobsmacked. We used that word earlier. I can use that in this situation. For that
Absolutely.
trio, I'm just like, that's cool.
How? And also around such an emotionally charged storyline,
Yeah.
too, to have that piece, if that's where modern opera is going, I think we're going to be okay.
Wow.
Because that piece sampled a bunch of different musical styles, but still actually felt like opera, not a musical. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm not sure where that line is.
Right.
But they found it.
That's great.
Wow.
And
that's
so I
great,
hope
yeah.
they continue to compose
Yeah.
hundreds of operas. Yeah. It was incredible. And thankfully, a big opera house like the Met they sold out. They're
Wow.
doing it again this season because they sold out completely last season
Yeah.
for that
Wow.
opera.
Okay, I really want to go see it.
Let's do it. I would see it again.
Okay, great.
So luckily they see that, and this gives me hope too, there is an audience for it. And a younger audience, I think, primarily, which we need, as unfortunately our audience is literally dying of old age. We need to find a way
Right.
to keep this alive. And so it's great that people are being receptive to that, and opera houses are also receiving that.
Right.
You know, they have to operate on what's best for business, and
Right.
that means ticket sales. So it's great. They just closed another new opera, The Champion.
Yeah.
I didn't get to see it, but that and Fire Shut Up in My Bones from last year. So it is happening. I think there are a lot of people who want to continue this art form, and that means evolving it.
Right.
Either finding a way to make the old stuff new again, or finding a way to make the new stuff more digestible.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say atonal music is hard to listen to.
It is.
You
It
have
totally
to
is.
you have to listen to it a few times, like you were saying. Sometimes you have to see it multiple times to digest it.
Right.
And that's not accessible for everyone.
Right. Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and kind of this question kind of jumps off of that, what you were just saying, is like, we ask you the question, you know, why do we think art is important? And I think you gave a beautiful, eloquent answer. But even to that, even getting more specific, you as a very passionate about opera singer, why do you think opera is important? If we do have musical theater and we do have all these other genres of music coming out, why can't we just let it become a museum piece? Like, why do we need to be pushing for it?
That's a great question. I think, again, art in general, but music more specifically, there is something for everyone. Some people love country music. Some people hate it. Some people love musical theater. Some people don't.
Yeah.
And I think opera is just another genre of music. And I mean, if you have never done this, please do this.
Okay.
The next time you go on a trip or even a walk in the park, play some classical music.
Yeah.
It can be just instrumental. It can be an opera piece, whatever calls to you. There is nothing quite like it. I mean, if you want to feel like you are the star of your own movie,
Yeah.
that's the way to do it. And I think it just speaks to the human experience. That's why we have to figure out a way to save it.
Yeah.
Because there's something so human and emotional in the writing of this music.
Yeah.
Words or no words.
Yeah.
I mean, there are vocal pieces that are just on vowel sounds, and
Yeah.
they break my heart.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I follow storylines when I'm watching an opera, but I don't ever really know what exactly it is that they're saying. But I said this earlier, that like the music informs so much of how the audience feels, that, and there is just something to particularly how in classical music, like the builds and the musical swells and then the moments of silence, like it is, I think, what you said about like humanity, like seeing humanity, it's like so elevated though, that it almost is like this comforting feeling, for me at least, of like, this is how big I feel internally sometimes.
That's really good, Rach.
That. And it makes me feel so seen.
Yeah, that's really
because
good.
it can be, and because sometimes I think people are like, it's so melodramatic, but I'm like, but it's so compelling. Like the music is so compelling. And when you have this vocal style that is so open and vulnerable, like, okay, listen, I think that style of singing, it is like so vulnerable compared to most styles that are out there now. So part of me is like, I never want that to be lost, because there's so much beauty in that alone, that it's like and I'm like babbling, but to the point of, I feel so seen, and that the emotions are so heightened and big. The fact that I'm so in awe then when vocally these performers are doing what they do. I mean, it truly brings me to tears most of the time when I'm watching an opera because it's just so like, it's like overwhelming, you know?
Definitely.
And I think that musical theater can do the same thing for sure. But it's a little more story driven, or I feel like I can't say that because I just understand what they're saying. But there is, I don't know, there's something to the music, how it's written. I think that you don't hear it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, maybe to your point, there's almost more space in not understanding exactly what's happening for your experience.
That's so true.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think musical
I've
theater.
never thought about that.
Me either.
Well,
just hearing you talk, I was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I do think.
I don't really know what I just said, by the way.
No. I think you were very eloquent. I think that there is, because you said I think musical theater can do the same thing, and I don't know if I totally agree. I think that I think musical theater
It's like adjacent.
is its own thing.
Yeah.
I think they are they come from each other. I think musical theater came from opera. It's a different form of the same. It's trying to do the same thing, but it doesn't accomplish the same thing as opera does. I do think that classical music. I love listening to classical music if I'm gonna draw or if I'm gonna paint or if I'm going on a walk or if I'm doing something that I want to get out of my head. Classical music is like the first thing that I turn on. Or like a film score or something like that. That is this big sweeping music. Whereas I think musical theater, because it is most of the time written in English and is very specific to a specific story, it becomes a lot smaller. It's like almost eating. Go with me on this metaphor. It's almost like opera is like, or it's almost like musical theater is a slice of pizza. Okay. The slice will fill you up. The slice is good. Oftentimes the slice can be very intricate. It can have different types of cheese. It can be very like exactly what you need in that moment. And it can speak to a very specific craving that you have.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love pizza.
Yeah.
That happens to me daily. But I feel like opera is getting the whole pie. So you might only eat one slice, but you're seeing and experiencing the whole pie at one time. So it's a lot of,
that's
you know, it's a lot of things happening at one time. That's why we feel this sweeping emotion, is because we might not know what exactly every cheese is on the pie, but we can smell it and it's like, whoo, it's overwhelming. The smell itself is overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is a benefit to both. I think we need both.
Absolutely.
I don't think one is better than the other. But I think there is a benefit to, you know, sometimes we need the whole pie, and then sometimes we're like, I just want the slice and I want to digest this one piece.
Absolutely. There's something for everyone.
Exactly.
There's a pizza topping
For everyone.
Everyone.
And similarly, some pizza shops may not be your favorite slice.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You got to try them all.
You got to try them all.
Yep.
You got to try them all.
Listen, I can tell you all the best parts in Manhattan.
Yeah, exactly.
I will take that list.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
I never thought we would be talking about opera and musical theater and pizza. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Question number 3. What keeps you grounded as a human?
So in thinking about this, because conversationally, I am the dog from Up, so I did want to give this a little forethought.
Yeah.
I realize I use grounded and humble interchangeably.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
a little
cool.
bit. So sort of a 2-part answer to that.
Cool.
I would say I've realized recently that I've tried to convince myself that I am what keeps myself humble. That internal critic.
Yeah.
I mean, we're our own worst critics.
Yes.
Yep.
That internal critic just really keeps me in check and keeps me humble. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we can all sort of empathize with this idea that as a creator, as a performer, you have to be the one to judge what you're putting out there.
Yeah.
So that you can evolve, you can hone in on things that may need some extra polishing, know your audience, know your brand, whatever it is. That voice, though, doesn't leave a ton of room for confidence or ego.
Yeah.
Good and bad. But that voice is definitely what keeps me humble. What keeps me grounded is something that I would call my pandemic perspective, not to keep dwelling on the pandemic, but
No, totally.
it was the first time in my adult life where I had sort of the forced opportunity to focus on the non-performer side of myself. Obviously, I tried to create and tried to get ahead during the pandemic.
Sure.
Sang for all my neighbors while they were also working from home. They did too.
Honestly, though, I love it when I hear people singing in my building. Or like, we had a trumpet player, I'm pretty sure, practicing throughout the pandemic. I thought it was fun.
But you know, in those moments where you need to just like reiterate the same phrase or the same high note,
Right. You're like, so sorry.
I'm not sure they loved those.
You're
moments.
right.
But yeah, it just gave me a lot of perspective of I'm a human being. There are different parts of my identity. It's not just the performer. Sure. I would
Sure.
say that's probably 95% of my identity. But that other 5% matters too.
Yeah.
And so it was the first time that I had sort of the time to do something that fulfilled me in a non-art way.
Yeah.
And was not a means to an end, like a day job.
Yeah.
I still had that, luckily, but it gave me time to realize, like, oh, this life is about so much more than my career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, that realization and actually traveling, I've never prioritized travel. My family was not a vacation family. And so I traveled during 2021 very
Yeah.
carefully.
Yeah.
Did everything I could to be COVID conscious.
Sure.
But being able to have that experience and see different cultures and see different sites and just like sit with myself. It was my first solo trip.
Yeah.
And so to sit with myself, even in that environment,
Yeah.
I think actually informs me as a better performer.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
You know, time is not on our side sometimes, it feels like. And so it's so easy, and I fell into this of thinking I always have to be doing something.
Yeah.
It always has to be related to my career somehow. Or I'm not doing enough.
Right.
That pressure it'll do you in.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
there's so much more to life, and it's actually going to make you a better creator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that realization is really what kind of grounded me as, yes, this is very much my everything,
Yeah.
but there are other things too.
Yes.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. I love that you said travel. Like, I just think getting out of, and Manhattan was such a bubble at that time too. So that was just, it is kind of naturally anyway. So I think, but wherever you live, you're going to be living in somewhat of a bubble. And I think getting out of that and realizing that there are other cultures, there are other beliefs, there are other, like,
That you can't walk everywhere.
that you can't walk everywhere. Yeah. Whoops.
New York has ruined me for that.
I know. But just, it's, it makes you feel, I say this, like, it makes you feel small in a good way.
Yeah.
It gives you such a perspective, and it puts things in the place that they need to be, I think.
Yeah.
And those experiences allow you then to delve into different characters or different levels of your characters too.
Oh, without a doubt.
Just because I've had this type of heartbreak, sure, I can tell that story time and time again, but until I experience another type of heartbreak or witness someone else's heartbreak, just as an example, those inform you as a performer as well. And I think that's so important to sort of what we were talking about earlier of the human connection, human experience. That's so essential to see other people's experiences too.
Yeah.
Right.
Very true.
Well, it grows you in empathy. Mm-hmm. Like we in March, Rach and I went and spent 10 days in Israel. And being able to be in another country where lots of people weren't speaking English, and we were, just being able to sit in another culture made me go, man, like we really are in such a bubble, whether it be in New York, whether it be in Manhattan, or whether it be just in America as a whole.
Yeah.
And being able to say, okay, like I love these people and I want to know about their culture and what brought them here. And it made me recognize how young we are as a nation, and how many thousands of years like humans go back, and being able to say, okay, like how then in approaching a character or approaching even just how I tell a story, in whatever capacity that is, how do I make this its most human?
Definitely.
And so travel, I think, is a necessity if you want to grow in empathy.
Yeah.
You need to travel. Get out of your bubble, go and experience something, get uncomfortable, go to places you feel uncomfortable, and just good luck. Buckle in and have fun.
But be open.
Yeah.
Be ready to
Exactly.
feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think we as a society hate being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's so good.
All of us are now uncomfortable because we're like, oh.
On that note.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Mariah, the next question is, what person, place, or experience has shaped you the most creatively?
So I have to say, obviously, my mother, the biggest influence on my life. I mean, she raised me. She is my number one supporter. I obviously wouldn't be on this earth without her, but I wouldn't even be in this room without her. Like, she has always championed my dreams and like helped me be like, okay, like what could we be doing better? It is a we.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It is a we.
Yeah.
She goes through the emotional trauma that I go through with the rejection. So, obviously she's had the biggest impact on my life, bar none.
Yeah.
But what I kind of thought was interesting to bring up and how we met, Rachel, is something that has changed my life profoundly recently has been Meisner Music.
Yeah.
This company, community, whatever you want to call it, concept, came to me at a time in my life, just this past summer, where I was fresh off a gig, and every single person that I worked with in the company told me that I didn't trust myself.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean,
what do you do with that? You're
what
like,
do you
thanks,
say?
I guess. Like,
I'm like,
what does it mean?
and
too?
what can I do about that?
yeah, exactly. You can give me anything else to go off of? Yeah.
I mean, it's such a weird concept. You are with yourself 24/7
Right.
from the day you're born until the day you die.
Right.
I guess unless you lose your mind, then I don't know where you go.
Yeah.
But to think that I didn't trust myself, the one person I spend the most time with,
Right.
I was completely lost. I was like, I would love to fix that for you and for me, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine who was on that gig with me got free tickets. Maybe the whole event was free, but tickets to the Meisner Music Workshop. And she's like, oh, you can apply to sing if you want.
Yeah.
And we had to like fill out this questionnaire. I was like, I don't even know what this is. I'm applying, but like, why? I have no idea.
Yeah.
And it was like, what are you struggling with? And I just let myself be so honest. And I was just like,
Yeah.
I don't trust myself. I don't know what to do about it.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
stuck. I don't know what this means for me.
Yeah.
And Jillian Page, the founder of Meisner Music, emailed me back. She's like, we would love to have you sing.
Wow.
This is exactly what we're about. And I was like, I don't even know what this is. I didn't even know if I was going to go.
Did you know that I was there?
No.
Yeah, I
Oh
was
my
there. And it's funny because I don't think I put that together when we first met in class.
Yeah.
But I remember you performing and just like the kind of light bulb go off. And it was the coolest thing. And that's when I was like checking it out too. I was like, is this something that I want to do? And I related so much to some of the things that you were saying. And I was like, oh yeah, I gotta do this.
Yeah, it was almost, I kind of thought Jillian was maybe like a witch of some sort because, you know, I sing through the piece and then she's like, okay, we're going to workshop this through Meisner. Just so I know, is there anything technically that we should be aware of?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, like I can hit the notes. I just don't trust myself to do them. What?
Yeah.
What just happened?
Yeah.
How did you get me to say that?
Right.
I've been, you know, it's
Dancing
been weeks.
around this. Yeah. Wow.
I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
I just like looked at her and was like, what is happening?
So
if
sweet.
this is a cult, I am 100% in.
Yeah.
Where do I give my blood oath? Whatever you need, I am there.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like I watched back a clip of that recently. And it's so funny seeing myself do the repetition exercise for the first time.
Yeah.
I was trying so hard to be correct and to be a good student.
Yeah.
And that's not what it's about at all.
Yeah.
It's about making mistakes and just being yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's completely changed my entire life as a human.
Yeah.
I know more about myself as a human being now than I've ever known before. Like this class, this technique is such a safe space that allows you to go there emotionally, but also teaches you sort of these defaults that we have grown accustomed to, especially living in New York City, where like, I mean, people are peeing everywhere. They're, you know, there's a lot of crazy things that happen and you have to be so shut off to that because you can't let that impact you every single day.
You would not make it.
No.
Yeah.
But then how do you go from that to now I'm going to be super vulnerable and tell this story of this super important story of this person who really struggled through this.
Right.
It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it
agree.
just taught me so much. And I'm also just the best performer I've ever been.
Yeah.
Which like a year ago, I wouldn't even say that out loud.
Yeah. Wow.
Even if it were true.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even be able to say that out loud.
Yeah. Dang.
There is so much of just learning to trust yourself in this process that's literally I not joking, from our last class, sent an email afterward that I was like processing. I was like, I'm kind of stuck here. And then as I was typing, I was like, I don't trust myself. And I was like, oh, it always kind of boils down to something that's like really simple. But then I think this is going to be actually, what am I saying? I was going to say this is going to be my last plug for Meisner Music. It's never going to be my last plug for it. But I will just say what's so helpful about this class is that it takes something as, it's simple to say, but what does it actually mean to trust yourself, and puts practical steps in place to help you get there. And I think that's what's been so cool. And something that I admire so much about you, Mariah, is just that you've been so disciplined in a really healthy way and good way about that process. And you have been so patient with it too, because I think I always say that like Meisner's kind of a slow burn, but it's like, listen, what are the best love stories? They're slow burns.
It's true.
Well, some of them are, never mind. But I just think that like being patient with yourself in the process, because you know it's going to eventually pay off, has been so cool to watch, like in you. I mean, with a lot of our classmates, it's really beautiful to watch. And it's not always linear. So I think we have to all accept that.
Oh yeah. Sometimes I go into class even now and I'm like, do I know how to do this? I've been studying this for months, but do I know how to do this?
Yeah. We all have those days where we're like, I don't think this is good. But yeah, no, I think that's just so awesome and cool to hear, very mutually agreed with too. So yeah, this is Meisner Music. We're going to put the information in our episode
Could not recommend it more.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's such a weird thing, like talking vocal technique to someone who doesn't sing. I don't know if you've had this experience. You start to put into words what it is that we do.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah.
Well, also you just start to see them glaze over, and you're like, you're like talking about never mind.
Yeah. I teach kids voice lessons, and
bless you.
Well, I really just have like one student right now, but this was like a pandemic thing that has slowly fizzled out. But I have a student, and when we first started, it was just hilarious because she's 10 and was just so embarrassed by the things that I was asking her to do, because you do weird things in voice lessons. And like we were talking about, like you're doing crazy things with like your mouth, and like I was like, make your tongue go like this, and she was like, what? And like she tried to do it and just started busting out laughing. And I think what I love about teaching kids is that and I think what's so powerful about the arts too is that you build confidence in being silly, and like just helping her realize like I know it's so funny, right? But like it actually helps us do this, and like it's just so, and it's so cool to actually see now, like she takes it so seriously because she knows it's gonna work. And anyway,
you gotta trust the process.
You really do.
But it's true, yourself. Like the voice is such a weird thing. Like you can think stuff, you can work on your breath and stuff like that, but you don't actually have control over what your chords are doing. Like you can free up the area around your chords and help it, or hurt it, but you don't actually get to, it's not a piano where you get to see actually what's happening and have that type of tangible control. And I think that's similar to Meisner, of like starting in the repetition exercise, it feels so silly because you can't tell if you're doing it correctly.
Right.
And it is just like, you have to trust that whatever it is singing Meisner, just the creative process, you have to trust that eventually it'll make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and it's so funny because I really do believe the older I get and the more I start to figure out how I function best creatively, the more I realize that creativity, even within itself, is not linear. So like one day you will be at the top of your game. I know like sometimes when I'm in voice lessons consistently and I feel like I'm like, yes, I can sing anything anybody gives me. I am it. And then the next day I suck. Yeah. And you're like, what? I'm so confused. Like, you're like, what is going on? But I think that's what's so beautiful about being a creative, and especially being a performer, is the fact that being not linear in our creative process is not only good, but it's valued, because being nonlinear means that eventually vulnerability will come out. Yeah. And that's the point. Mm-hmm. Because if you realize, oh, this isn't linear, well, then I just need to accept whatever I have in the moment in this particular show or class or whatever, and that's going to be its most honest. Yeah. And that's what's going to impact somebody, is you being honest in the moment. Yeah. Not your performance.
Exactly.
People shouldn't walk away from a performance going, oh man, like that particular note. I mean, sometimes we do that, but like that particular note she hit, like that was just impressive. As an artist, as LB, my hope is that somebody walks away from a performance I give and is like, man, I was impacted by that story. Yes. Man, I want to go and do something now. Like now I'm led to action because of the story that was told, not how lifted my soft palate was.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even if I completely botch a song that I sing or a scene that I have, hopefully that person can still walk away from it going, yeah, that story was told well, and now I have to act.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I love that.
So good.
I totally identify with that.
Yeah.
Art, it sounds bad to say this, but it is a selfish thing for the creator, because I want to connect with someone like that. I want someone to feel seen through what I could create.
Right. Exactly.
And that, I mean, you basically just summarized the entire Meisner technique. Like, it is about where you're meeting yourself where you're at. I am a Meisner student. Meeting yourself where you're at in that moment.
Right.
And that, it's so true. I think we're so almost careful with ourselves in that way. Like, the other day I had some acid reflux and I wanted to cancel a coaching with someone who I really value their opinion. And he was like, yeah, but you're going to have acid reflux when you're on a gig.
Right.
So who better to show you how to sing
navigate
while you
it.
have that?
Right.
And it's similar to what you were saying, like, you're not always going to feel your best, but that could bring such a cool color to whatever you're doing that day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, ladies, we could go on and on.
We could. I'm so sorry.
No, are you kidding? This is such good stuff. We're going to wrap with the last question. What book, play, or film do you think every person should read or watch?
So the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking of this question is the book Golf is Not a Game of Perfect.
Wait.
It's written by sports psychologist Dr. Bob Rotella, with editor Bob Cullen. My dear friend and coach, Nicolo Speltz, suggested that I read this book because so the book sort of deals with the mentality of being an athlete and furthermore, being a winning athlete. And my coach recommended this to me because he has sat in on some of my auditions, definitely played for my recordings, and we've obviously coached together. He saw the disconnect I had between my practice and then auditions and recordings. He sort of pointed out to me, obviously I was aware something wasn't working in those situations, but he pointed out to me, he's like, you're like changing everything. All of a sudden when there's pressure and, you know, a tangible result has to be had, you self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
And it's interesting, like, through Meisner, I've sort of gleamed that when I'm in a practice room or coaching session, I'm allowed to make mistakes. That's my time to make mistakes. I don't always love making mistakes, even in that environment, but it's my time to.
Right.
And then in a performance, anything that goes wrong is the character's fault. It's not my fault. And that is so satisfying. Yes. I get so much relief from knowing that.
Yeah.
Because I also think, you know, you prepare so much that whatever happens, like the beauty of live performance, as they say, you respond in the moment as the character.
Right.
And so you do trust that.
Yeah.
I trust the character. I don't trust myself. So then when I'm in like a recording session we do pre-screen auditions for a lot of applications, I have to be a one-take wonder. And in an audition setting, I have to book the job.
Right.
Yeah.
That amount of pressure allows for no mistakes.
Right. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this book talks about sort of the different mentalities you have to have. Like, you have to have big dreams because you have to be motivated by something very specific, but also very big.
Yeah.
You have to be able to sort of focus in on a very simple but specific target. I mean, in this book, it's golf. So whatever the target is, the hole, the flag, I don't know how to play golf. Right?
Yeah.
But you also have to know that when you train, that's when you focus on your technique.
Yeah.
When you're in a match or a performance audition, what have you, that is not the time to fiddle with your technique.
Right.
You have to trust that again, trust, it's everything. You have to trust that you trained to do the thing that you're about to do. And also prepare yourself that one mistake, one bad swing, one bad note does not have to impact the rest of your game or performance.
Right.
And that's what's so mind-blowing to me is like
Yeah.
the minute when I'm myself as a singer in an audition, in a tape, of course I'm acting these characters, but it just feels like it's me.
Yeah.
It feels like it's me.
Yeah.
And there's no one else to blame.
Right.
If it goes wrong.
Right.
And so I get in my head of like, oh, that note wasn't what I wanted. And then not only are you now stuck on that note while you're singing 2 measures ahead,
Right.
you've created this tension and then you're trying something new. And
Yeah.
it's like, who is this?
Right.
I don't sing like this normally. I've never tried to sing like this before.
Right.
You stop trusting the training. So this book has like blown my mind.
You gotta read it.
Yeah, I was about to say, ordering that on Amazon
Yes.
tonight.
I know.
Yeah.
My dad's gonna love that answer too.
Yeah,
He's a
exactly.
golfer.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Something for the whole family.
Exactly.
Like book club.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I
love
think
that
it's,
answer.
whether you're an athlete, honestly, even if you're just someone with a desk job,
Yeah.
I think this applies to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Man, so good.
Mariah, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
This was like such a treat to have you. And
Truly.
I loved this conversation.
Yeah, so
Me
many
too.
good things.
Yeah.
I could talk for hours.
I truly,
Exactly.
I'm
Sure
like,
we
I'm
did.
gonna like think on this now for the rest of the day. It's
I know,
just gonna
exactly.
be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where can people find you on social media? All of that.
I am on Instagram, Mariah Muehler. I also have recently joined 2023 and am producing TikToks.
Yes,
I
you are.
have to laugh at that because
Wow.
I have boycotted TikTok for so long, and now I hear it's being canceled, and I'm
don't
just
even know.
joining. Yeah.
You're like, here I am.
Yeah, but I've had conversations like this with a lot of my friends of just the process of being a performer and imposter syndrome and all of that. And through Meisner technique, I am ready to expose myself
Yes.
to the world. These inner thoughts
Come on.
and
Come
fears that I have. I will say, the minute you're ready to tell someone them,
Yeah.
they really do lose their power.
100%. Drag those things into the light, man.
Yes, you see how silly it is.
Yeah.
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 So yeah, I am on TikTok. I think my username is NYC_soprano. That feels right.
Love
Yeah.
that.
With the question mark or
Please. Can I add a question mark? 'Cause if I can, I will.
You're right. NYC
Maybe.
_soprano.
There it is.
No question mark, everybody.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. And then your website is mariahmuehler.com.
That's the one.
Amazing. Oh my gosh.
Perfect.
All of these will be linked in the episode description. So
Cool.
take a look.
Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, Mariah. Awesome. And you guys, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the For the Makers podcast. To find out more about Seated Productions, you can visit our website at www.seatedproductions.com and follow us on Instagram at seated.productions. And if you love what we do and want to support us, you can make a tax-deductible donation by visiting our website or by following the link in our podcast description. Until next time, listen well and tell stories.